This video is going to go over the exotic linear fusion rifle Finality's Auger with catalyst from the new dungeon and whether it's worth using it in endgame. The catalyst will give you bait and switch. Here's the perks. While the turret is deployed, this weapon can paint targets with its laser projectiles. The turret prioritizes painted targets and fires more powerful munitions at them. Long press reload to swap between normal fire and laser fire modes. Long press to fire a special projectile that deploys a rune-scribed turret. This projectile costs free ammo to fire. Aim the projectile skyward to provide the clearest sight lines for the turret, which will automatically shoot at nearby targets. So we need to understand the turret and what it works with, because this is a solar weapon. So the first thing I tested today is, does it work with Ember of Singeing? Does the turret scorch targets? And I can tell you that it doesn't. That's a shame. Because if it did, I had a really good Dawn Chorus build going for this, and it doesn't. Maybe they need to buff the turret so that it scorches targets. But I can tell you, the turret works with Ember of Empyrean. So you're going to get restoration back from the turret if you use a restoration build, for example. That's very good to know. Not only that, it works and gives you orbs of power if you run Solar Siphon. If you run a Solar Siphon, the turret will make you orbs of power. I have footage of that. And the turret works for bait and switch. Okay? It's considered for that. Right, so the clip, what I've done today is I tested what the weapon's like for DPS. And what's the weapon like just in a generic way to use it in a solo nightfall experience. So there's two sort of factors that we're judging this weapon on. First and foremost, DPS. Right. If there's a DPS phase on any dungeon boss, especially if you're solo and it's 30 seconds or less, this weapon isn't it. I'm sorry, I've tried to make it work today, but it isn't it. I've come to the conclusion that, no, this isn't the identity of the gun. It's doing pretty decent damage. It's not below average, but I would say it's average. Don't forget, it's an exotic weapon. Sleeper Simulant will out DPS Finality's Auger. Queenbreaker will out DPS Finality's Auger. Not only that, Cataclysmic is competitive damage to it. So if you just do Wither Horde Cataclysmic, you're basically emulating similar damage to Finality's Auger damage anyways. So why would you really want to use Finality's Auger? Well, it's not just using the weapon itself. You can use it in different ways. It's Anarchy. Think of this linear as a Anarchy linear. It doesn't do as much damage as Anarchy as the Traps does. That's to consider. So say, for example, you do some shenanigans with Unvoiced. Why don't you just use it with Anarchy? Why bother painting the target to do that, to then do your DPS with this, when you could just do Anarchy? You see what I'm saying? Another way that you could do this is pair it with Eremite, because you're going to get Solar Weapon Surge. So if you've got a damage phase that's longer than 30 seconds, then this weapon's going to excel that way. If you pair it with Eremite, you're going to put out really good damage, depending on what boss we're talking about in the dungeon, though. It's all subjective, right? Because we're up against the Puppet Master. Well, where are we going to stand to DPS him with a Legendary Fusion? Yeah? Probably better just to DPS with Finality's Auger and do some sort of DPS rotation like an auto-load mountaintop, then a bait and switch sniper, for example. Right? Which I haven't not tested Vesper's Host yet. I haven't got round to doing that. So yeah, I'm just explaining different ways that you can use this weapon. But if you use it as your main DPS and you do a bait and switch rotation, I'm just letting you know Cataclysmic basically does the same thing. So if you're going to use an exotic linear for DPS, you are almost certainly better with Sleeper Simulant. Sleeper Simulant is hitting unbelievably hard. Or you use Queenbreaker, which is also hitting unbelievably hard. Alright, so on a clip that you'll see coming up, I actually done a damage rotation with Sanguine. So remember, Sanguine's a ×4 surge because we're on well. So I've done a Well of Radiance damage rotation just to see what sort of damage it does with the turret applied to a boss. Remember, the turret also procs bait and switch and particle reconstruction. You will get your particle reconstruction stacks quicker. You'll see that clip coming up. What I've also done is showed you some footage of it being used on a champion at minus 20 delta. I was minus 20 delta. The champion was 2050 in power, and I was 2030. And I can tell you absolutely, unequivocally, that this weapon's identity is a GM weapon. It's not a dungeon weapon, and it's not a raid weapon, unless you've got maybe one guy in a raid team using this. You know, you could use it in that sense. But in terms of like solo DPS for a dungeon, it's not it. It's not hitting it. So for example, for Karev, I haven't got the footage, but just trust it, because I don't lie about stuff. With the dungeon for final boss, with Karev, you can hit 4 million plus with Queenbreaker, and for Sleeper, 3.5, almost 4 mil in the right DPS rotation for Sleeper. Well, you can barely scrape 3 mil with Finality's Auger, and you've got to play your mind out to make sure you get that damage rotation, because it's quite difficult to do. It's a finicky gun. You've got to swap it to the turret, fire your turret, then you've wasted free ammo, then swap it back to the normal fire mode, get a reload, then do a bait and switch DPS rotation. You see how it's just too complicated? You would just be better off just doing Queenbreaker, boom, 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 or Sleeper in the new dungeon. But for longer damage rotations, there will be a little bit of a niche for it. What they need to do with the weapon is give it a 10% buff. 10 to 15, I would say 10 to 15 will set this weapon into a nice little niche where it's usable. Right now it's usable, but it's not quite there, right? More than likely because of other options are just that much, they're just that much appealing to us right now, you know? So, yeah, that's the information on it. But like I say, this weapon's more of a champ dealer. It's more for ad clear. It's more for GMs, Grandmaster, Nightfalls. It's not for solo DPS requirements on dungeon. Maybe somebody in a fire team can have, you know, pop the turret for your team and do it like that. You know, you can do that as well with it. But yeah, that's the information on this. The clips are coming up. So the first clip's just me showing you a DPS rotation with Finality's Auger, just to give you an idea. This damage phase is around 30 seconds. So we're going to make sure that we proc bait and switch. We're also going to use Wither and Gaze. So we're going to have a debuff target with particle reconstruction. With Wither and Gaze fusion. So we'll get our turret in advance. We'll pop a well. We'll swap our gun. Make sure it's reloaded. Make sure it's linear fusion mode. Then we'll do a bait and switch combo. Wither and Gaze takes 1.5 seconds to proc, I know, but that's fine. We're hitting for 167 on crit when we do our crits, not a perfect damage phase. This damage needs to be more than half. We don't do a second bait and switch damage rotation, because by the time we do it, the damage phase is over, so it's not worth it. See what I'm saying? So because of the nature of the gun, it's better on longer phases, because then you could do a second turret, but that would be a cost of another 3 ammo. So look at the damage. We just get him at half HP. Thunderlord will outperform this weapon, basically. So it's not really competitive for damage. That damage wasn't bad, but I had bells and whistles. Sagwin times 4 surges, Wither and Gaze, I give it everything. Sleeper, Queenbreaker would have done far more damage there. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Alright, this is where it shines. I'll be doing a solo GM with Finality's Auger next week. GMs aren't out yet. So, but this champ here is he's 2050 in power, the champ. I am 2030. Look at the damage the turret's doing. It's actually pretty good, and it's proc and particle reconstruction for me. So then we can clean up champs. So look, it's going to be a champ dealer. Very good as GM weapon. Very, very good. As a dungeon DPS style weapon, no. That was the video on this. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.